In Magic the Gathering's 30-plus year history, there have been 22 cards printed that have the same name as a set in Magic the Gathering. Now, not all cards are as good as others. You can say that about the sets as well. Prophecy, I see you, there is still no excuse. But I digress. Let's get back to looking at the cards in alphabetical order, starting with Aether Revolt, which comes out next week for Modern Horizons 3, but today's a pre-release, so we're adding it to the list. It shares its name with the 73rd Magic expansion, Aether Revolt, that came out in 2017. An enchantment costing 2 red and 2. The first half of the card says as long as a permanent you control has left the battlefield this turn, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent that opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. But the real star of this card might be the second half that says whenever you get 1 or more energy, the card deals that much damage to any target. Might see some play in Commander, might even squeak into Modern. All Will Be One, which came out in the set Phyrexia All Will Be One from 2023, technically shares a name with its namesake set, so we're counting it. An enchantment costing 5, 2 red mana plus 3 generic mana, it's a fairly powerful and popular card, and that damage is equal to the number of counters you put on that permanent or player. So yeah, things can get out of hand pretty fast with this one. Apocalypse is a card that first saw print in 1997's Tempest, and shares a name with the Apocalypse set from 2001, which is the final set in Magic's Invasion block. The card is a sorcery that costs 3 red and 2 that removes all permanents from the game, but also forces you to discard your hand. And while you might think that that's a big drawback as all of your opponents get to keep their hands, it does play well into Madness strategies so long as you remember to float your mana beforehand. Part of Magic's reserved list, the card has never been reprinted. Cold Snap is a card from 1995's Ice Age that technically shares a name with Cold Snap the set from 2006. It's the much belated final set for the Ice Age block. It's okay if you don't remember this card though, because it's not really all that great. An enchantment costing 2 and a white, it deals 1 damage to the active player for each snow-covered land they control, which is a pretty narrow ability, even for a set like Ice Age, where snow-covered lands debuted. To make the card even worse, it has a cumulative upkeep of 2 mana, meaning it's not really going to stick around long enough for it to get too much damage in anyhow. Like Apocalypse, this card has also never been reprinted, but not because of the reserve list, which it's not a part of. More likely because, well, why would you? Okay, moving on. Conflux is the second card on this list that shares a name with a set it came from, which would be, of course, 2009's Conflux, which is the middle set of the Alara block. Costing 8 mana, 3 plus 1 of each color, this card actually sees play here and there, thanks to it letting you search your library for a card of each color and put them into your hand. It's also a major plot point for the Alara block storyline. This card has so far seen print 3 times, as it was reprinted in the From the Vault lore box set, as well as Masters 25. Conspiracy is a card from the set Mercadian Masks, which came out in 1999, 15 years before the set Conspiracy came out. A creature type matters card, it's an enchantment that costs 2 black and 3, and turns all creature cards you own into a creature type of your choice, basically making any deck a typal, or tribal if you prefer the old term, type of deck. And the coolest thing is that it does not just affect your creatures in play, but also those that are not in play, including those in your library, graveyard, exile, and even on the stack. Conspiracy, the card, has seen print 3 times, including a time-shifted card in Time Spiral, and as part of the list. Future Sight is a card that made its debut in 2002's Onslaught and shares its name with the final set from the Time Spiral block in 2007. It's a card that still sees play from time to time. An enchantment costing 5, 2 plus 3 blue, it makes its controller play with the top card of their library revealed and allows them to play that card if they so choose, basically extending the player's hand to the top of their library. The card has been reprinted 4 times since its initial printing, most recently as part of a secret lair drop. Hour of Devastation is the 3rd card on this list to be released in its namesake set. A damage-oriented board wipe type of card, it's a sorcery that costs 2 red and 3 that not only deals 5 damage to each creature and planeswalker not named Nicol Bolas, nice flavor right there, but it also temporarily removes the indestructible ability from each one as well. Unless you want to count the pre-release promo, this card has yet to be reprinted. March of the Machines technically does not count, as the set it shares a name with is 2023's March of the Machine. It's singular rather than plural, but we're including it anyhow. Debuting in 2003's Mirrodin, March of the Machines is an enchantment costing 3 and a blue that makes all non-creature artifacts into artifact creatures, with power and toughness equal to its mana cost, meaning that your, let's say, Hedron Archive, a non-creature artifact with mana cost of 4, would become a 4/4 artifact creature, for example. It also means that all of those clue, treasure, and other tokens in play become 0/0 creatures that will, well, pretty much die immediately. Funny how that works. Mirrodin Besieged, from the original Modern Horizons from 2019, is the first card on our list that shares a name with a set that came out before its printing, which, of course, would be the 2011 set Mirrodin Besieged from the Scars of Mirrodin block. As for the card, it's an enchantment, lots of enchantments on this list, costing 2 and a blue that gives its caster a choice. They can either side with the Mirrans and create a 1/1 colorless mirror token artifact creature whenever they cast an artifact, or side with the Phyrexians. Doing that lets its controller draw and discard a card at the end of its turn, and if there are at least 15 artifact cards in their graveyard, they can force a target opponent to lose the game. Harsh. Morningtide from 2002's Torment shares its name with a second set in the Lorwyn block from 2008. It's a sorcery costing 1 and a white that simply exiles all cards in all graveyards. Yours, mine, theirs. Really, it's an equal opportunity offender. It's also never been reprinted. Onslaught is a card from the 1998 set Exodus, and shares its name with the rather popular Onslaught set from 2002. Yet another enchantment. It costs a single red to cast, and lets you tap a creature every time you cast a creature spell. Something that seems better suited for blue or white these days. And for a card called Onslaught, you'd think there would be some damage dealing involved, but no. Despite being a common, it's never seen a reprint. Prophecy, which is from the much maligned Homelands set from 1995, is not a wholly terrible card. And that's despite it, ironically, sharing a name with another of Magic's worst ever sets, Prophecy, from the year 2000. A sorcery costing a single white mana to cast, it forces one of your opponents to reveal the top card of their library. If it's a land, you gain a life, which isn't amazing, especially for white. That card then gets shuffled back into the library. But that's not all, as the card is also a cantrip and lets you draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, which is pretty nice for a color that doesn't get a whole lot of card draw on its own. So hey, a Homelands card that isn't entirely horrible. Rise of the Eldrazi is a card from 2023's Commander Masters that shares a name with the final set in the original Zendikar block from 13 years prior. The second card on this list to be named after a previously released set, it's an uncounterable sorcery that costs a whopping 12 mana, 3 colorless plus 9 generic. Thankfully it does a lot for that high cost, as it destroys a target permanent, lets a target player draw 4 cards, and lets you take an extra turn. 1 ability each to represent each of the 3 Eldrazi Titans, Ulamog, Kozilek, and Imrakul. The Brothers' War is an enchantment saga that shares its name with the set it came out in, albeit the Commander version of that set, back in 2022. The card essentially tells the tale of the Brothers' War in 3 chapters, starting with the splitting of the Might Stone and Meek Stone, creating 2 Power Stones, the brothers' conflict over those stones, and then finally, more or less, the end of the world. Throne of Eldraine, from the Wilds of Eldraine Commander decks in 2023, is also named after a previously released set by the same name from 2019. An artifact costing 5 to play, its ability to create 4 mana of a chosen color is an homage to the Adamant mechanic from Throne of Eldraine that did not make its way back for Wilds of Eldraine. Time Spiral, which debuted in the overpowered Urza's Saga set from 1998, shares its name with the wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey Time Spiral set from 2006, and it's a whopper of a card. Inspired by the Power 9 card Time Twister, Time Spiral is a sorcery costing 2 blue plus 4, and has each player shuffle their graveyard and hand into their deck, then drawing 7 new cards. Oh, and you get to untap 6 lands, which effectively makes this card free after rebate. Yeesh. Torment, a creature enchantment from 1998 Stronghold, shares a name with the middle set of the Odyssey block from 2002. The card costs 2 mana, 1 black and 1 generic, and simply gives the creature it enchants a -3/-0 debuff. Not exactly tormenting, but it is what it is. Urza's Saga is a card from Modern Horizons 2 that was inspired by the overly broken aforementioned set Urza's Saga from 1998, and it's nearly as overpowered as its namesake. An enchantment land, again with the enchantments. It only sticks around for 3 turns, but that's more than enough time to turn the tide of a game. First, it taps for colorless. Okay, that's fine. Then, it's able to create an artifact creature that scales to the number of artifacts you have in play. That could get out of hand. Then, as its final trick, it lets you search your library for any artifact costing 1 or 0 mana. Any. And there are plenty to choose from. I get that they wanted to do an homage to the Urza Saga block, but come on. They didn't need to make it this close in spirit to the Power of Magic's strongest block of sets ever. Visions, a card from the 1994 set Legends, shares its name with the middle set of the Mirage block from 1997. It's a sorcery, costing a single white mana to cast, that lets you look at the top 5 cards of any player's library, and gives you the option to shuffle that library afterwards. You want to peek at what's coming up for you and decide if you like it or not? Go ahead. Same with your opponent. If you don't like what they have coming up, give their deck a shuffle. Or maybe you see that they're about to be flooded with 4 straight unwanted land draws, and you just want to let them suffer. Not that you'd actually do that. Would you? War of the Spark is a card that has its name inspired by the 2019 conclusion of the Guilds of Ravnica block. A special promo card that's given out to recognize internal Wizards of the Coast teams and individuals, it's not a card that you can actually play with. It's more of a collector's item, and, as such, it has a card back that is very different from that of normal Magic cards. But it still qualifies for this list, and oh man, look at that artwork! Kudos to Chris Seaman on this one. And finally, we have the card Weatherlight from the 2018 set Dominaria. It shares its name with the final set of the Mirage block from 1997. The card, which is a 4-drop legendary artifact vehicle, represents one of the most iconic airships in the game's history. In fact, there was an entire epic, multi-block story arc called the Weatherlight Saga that is, still today, considered to be one of the best story arcs in the game's history. The funny thing is that this isn't even the first Weatherlight card to be printed. Many years before this, in the set Planeshift, was the card Skyship Weatherlight. But that card isn't close enough for a match, so 2018's Weatherlight it is. So there you have it, 22 Magic the Gathering cards that share a name with 22 Magic the Gathering sets. Thank you for watching.